And we're back with the politics lead. A stark warning today that American veterans are going to die because of Washington, D.C. dysfunction. That message from advocates who are outraged after a Senate vote failed last night to advance legislation that would have helped millions of veterans exposed to toxic burn pits abroad during their military service. It was a surprise because just last month, the Senate passed another version of the same bill with overwhelming support, 84-14. But yesterday, 25 Republicans who voted for that original bill voted no. They say because Democrats didn't allow amendment votes that Republican Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania wanted. Today, the mother-in-law of Heath Robinson, a veteran who died in 2020 from complications tied to his exposure to burn pits and for whom the bill is named, she called out every Republican who voted against it.
They don't give a shit about veterans. And like someone said before, every single one has pictures with veterans on their Facebook pages, on their websites. Well, screw that. They don't support veterans. If you vote no on this bill, you do not support veterans.
I want to bring in comedian and activist Jon Stewart, who has fought for years to get this legislation passed. You just heard the passion of Heath Robinson's mother-in-law. Just, heartbreaking sound. We also understand that some of these advocates were just escorted by the Capitol Police out of a Senate building. What's your response to that?
It's dangerous to have to explain to people's faces why you're denying them health care and benefits. So if anybody should have been escorted out of the building, it should have been the senators that chose to stab these veterans in the back. So I have no sympathy for them being asked to explain their really, I mean, honestly, Jake, like, I don't know what to say. You know, I've been coming down here for years. I've never seen anything like this. And it's not, as I was saying in the press conference, I'm used to lies. I'm used to hypocrisy. I'm used to their cowardice. I'm not used to the cruelty, like the casual cruelty of passing a bill that they had fought for more than a decade. And look, there are Vietnam veterans on this bill. They've been fighting since the 60s and 70s, people that fought for us, that we all say we support the troops. To pass that bill for them, to give them that moment of exhale. By the way, their trial isn't over. That just means that maybe they'll get their health care, maybe their family get the benefits, maybe they won't have to decide between their chemo and their car.
Right, they still might die.
Well, a lot of them, unfortunately, when you have cancer, a lot of these guys tell me, they live scan to scan. So they live in 3-month increments, right? And these guys are all, oh, don't worry. This is just procedural. It's a protest against an amendment. It's mandatory versus discretionary. It's all these nonsensical reasons to delay and deny when they pass the exact same bill on June 16th. Nothing's changed.
So Pat Toomey, the Republican from Pennsylvania, he says he doesn't have, it's his amendment.
You should say Patriot Pat Toomey. He prefers Patriot Pat Toomey. That's his given moniker.
His amendment is the one that we're talking about. This is all held up over.
That's correct.
He says his amendment addresses how this $400 billion in the bill can be spent. He says as it's written, the money can be used for things unrelated to veterans.
That's nonsense.
And burn pit exposure.
It's just utter nonsense. The Secretary of the VA has to go every year, even though it goes into a mandatory spending tranche where it comes to that. The VA Secretary still has to go in every year and explain the appropriation and the use. And the spending of the money is related to the bill. It's not a slush fund.
Right.
But if you want to talk about slush funds, if Senator Toomey wants to explain his fiscal conservatism, then why is it that he voted, every year we vote for what's called the OCO. It's a $60 billion, $70 billion fund that goes on top of the $600 billion or $700 billion or $800 billion that the Pentagon already gets. And it is unaccountable. There are no guardrails. It truly can be spent on pretty much whatever they decide they want to spend it on. Toomey's never raised a peep about it. He's never raised his hand. He's never objected. He's never held up the NDAA because of it.
The defense bill, you're saying, the NDAA.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the Overseas Contingency Operations Fund is a literal definition of a slush fund. And all of these individuals that voted to deny the veterans the health care and benefits that they've been fighting for 15 years voted for this slush fund. So they're lying. A, you can't just spend this money on whatever you want to. And B, when there have been billions of dollars in expendable money that they can spend whatever they want to, they vote for it.
Well,
so this is nonsense.
The Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin, who's one of the co-sponsors of the bill in the House, when I asked her about this, she said, I'm paraphrasing, it's odd how nobody has any objection on how much money we spend on going to war. But when it comes to taking care of the people who wage these wars.
Trillions of dollars.
Yeah.
Rick Scott, senator from Florida, had a great tweet today. Glad to be here at the VSO to pack care packages for those and honor their service for how much they give to us. And then an hour later went on the floor and denied those veterans health care and benefits. Like, the hypocrisy is so galling, but then you get to a place where I'm at right now, which is, how do you shame the shameless? What will get through to them? The stories that you heard are heartbreaking. A gentleman today told me of someone who committed suicide. Rosie's husband attempted to take his own life based on his desperation with this system and this process of being denied care. And these guys, they act like, oh, don't worry. Maybe we'll get to it now. Maybe we'll get to it in the lame duck session. Some of these folks won't be around. They live scan to scan. So they can pretend to be on Senate time, but these other folks are on human time. And that time is precious. Senate time, these guys all live to be 200 years old. They never lose their jobs. They always get their health care. Like, nothing matters to them. Nothing penetrates that bubble that they live in of procedural bullshit.
You and all the 9/11 first responders were able to shame Congress into helping with those benefits. You were able to do that. Your testimony and the testimony of others with you, some of whom are no longer with us, had an effect. You don't think you can this time?
It did. This passed.
Right.
We passed the House. The PACT Act passed the House.
And it passed the Senate,
And
too.
then it passed the Senate, 84-14.
Yep.
A wipeout. And there was a technical error, one sentence. So I want people to understand, the PACT Act, with the mandatory spending provision that Toomey is objecting to, passed with overwhelming Republican support. Toomey hasn't supported it at all because I think robots can't feel. So that may be why he hasn't supported it, because he's not a real boy and can't feel real boy feelings. Mm-hmm. But this all passed. There was one provision in it that was snuck in by the VA, not snuck in, but put in, that wanted to let rural medical practices be sold to the VA so that veterans who lived far distances from the system could still get VA quality toxic exposure care, right? Just one sentence. Got flagged as a blue slip issue because they felt that was a revenue generating provision, and that has to start in the House, because God knows, why shouldn't we just live all our lives by Robert's Rules of Order?
Right.
So
it went back to the House.
So it went back to the House. First of all, the Senate tried to go down in that moment on June 16th and say, hey man, a little bit of a screw up. Can we just get unanimous consent to remove that sentence? Senator Pat Toomey, no, we can't. 300 House Republicans passed it, 84 senators passed it, and one guy can go, yeah, no, they don't get health care and they don't get benefits. Why? Because I don't feel like it. So the House has to go back. They all go away for 2 weeks. The House comes back. They rewrite it without the sentence. They fix the one sentence.
Right.
It passes with 90 more Republican votes. Chairman Boss, even from the Senate, from the House Veterans Affairs Committee, who was against it at first, writes a long thing. The Senate version fixed all the problems that I had with it. This is great for veterans. I'm proud to support it. It was 390, 380 to whatever. It passes. Goes right back to the Senate. This is just a memo vote on cloture, just to get it through. Pat Toomey, no.
And yeah, we were all stunned. I mean, those of us who had followed this, we didn't see this coming at all. Had been told by the Senate Republicans this was a done deal, it was all over.
So we went into Senate, we're in the building, and we start going to offices. And God bless the assistants, because they're the ones who have to cover for the cowardice of their bosses.
Yeah, they're the ones that answer the phones.
They're the ones that answer the phones. And by the way, when we walk into the offices, they're on the phone with people. First office we went into was Marshall's of Kansas. Yes, no, the PACT Act, no, he does support it. So we finally get one of his legislative people to come out. You know that Senator Marshall was one of the first supporters of this. Great. So why did he turn it down? Well, we just have to fix this budget issue. What's the budget issue? Because he voted yes for it when that budget issue was in it the first time. So what is it about it now that made him realize, oh, well, there wasn't, the energy behind it? I don't know what that means. What are you fucking talking about? Seriously. Like, what kind of nonsense? I'm standing here with people on oxygen tanks. Like, what are you do they understand that, chips and reconciliation and all these things there are real people who face tragic consequences for their parliamentary fuckery.
And the important thing to remember is they have these diseases because they went to wars that we sent them to. Jon Stewart, we're going to stay on top of this. I know you're going to stay on top of it. Thank you so much.
Please, thank you so much. And the real thing is this. Our goal is they can't leave for their recess until this is done. When you fight for this country, you don't get to leave until the mission is completed, until your job is done. They don't let you just leave. And we feel that the Senate has to live up to the oath that the men and women who fight for this country have to live up to.
Amen. Jon Stewart, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.